Welcome back, travelers. This is the Welcome Travelers podcast, a traveling podcast where we talk about all types of things about traveling. Talk about some adventures, some locations that I've been to in the past, and hopefully we'll get some guests on in the future to talk about their adventures and stories too. This is a podcast that encourages traveling, encourage new travelers to try new things, and hopefully it can give you some advice, some tips to do that. We're excited to hear what your traveling's been in the past, and if you're curious about some things, give us a comment. Write it out, and we'll try to answer it to the best to our ability. Now, this podcast you can listen to on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. We might venture out to other areas as well. But check us out in Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Give us a follow. It helps the podcast out a lot. You can follow us on Instagram, on Blue Ties Pictures on Instagram, and you can also follow us on Facebook with Welcome Travelers Podcast. We might do Twitter. We probably will do Twitter to give you kind of more behind the scenes, more encouragement, more interactions. I figured Instagram and Twitter has better algorithms to interact with people versus Facebook. But check us out. Give us a like. Again, helps the podcast, helps us out, helps us grow. We really want to reach out to different people. And also on the next day, so these will air on Mondays. And on Tuesdays, the YouTube version will be aired as well. Get more video side. You get to see me. You can see more videos, more pictures being shown. And when we have guests on, we'll show their stuff as well. So we got some pretty exciting stuff in the future to give you. Our first guest ever on this podcast, it will be aired next week. It is another landscape nature photographer. She will share her pictures, her experiences as well. A kind of different take as well for me. For someone who's just been living here in Washington for the last couple of years, we get to talk to someone who's been living here for all of their lives. So it's pretty exciting stuff. We already recorded it, so it's great stuff. It'd be fun and kind of have that nice interaction of conversation back and forth too. So our first segment of the day is, we call this, and first off, thanks for listening for the first episode of the podcast. It's kind of more of a trial base, try and get stuff out there, produced and out there. And this episode is kind of has more of a structure to it. More segments, breaks down a lot more things. And hopefully it'll get you into the action much, much quicker. And our first segment of today is called, Where Are You Coming From? Kind of like when you have a guest over and you're asking like, hey, where have you been? Where have you been coming from? Or if I used to live in Southern California and in Los Angeles, and I feel like every first 5, 10, 20 minutes of the conversation is, how did you get here? What interstate you took, how much traffic it was, where'd you park, every time. So if you're in LA, that's a good icebreaker to have with your friends if you're visiting. But so where are you coming from? So this segment talks about my week, what I've been up to, and all that stuff. And really this week, I recorded our first guest, which has been a fantastic episode. I can't wait to share that to you. And really it's been spring stuff. Allergies has been pain in the butt. It's a great time for pictures or videos for this time of year, for all the flowers being bloomed. And yeah, and then with that is all the pollen. And it's been a big, I don't know, it feels like it's always an adjustment this time around. Every year it's an adjustment for it. Eyes are burning, flowers being bloomed, allergies, bees. I'm allergic to bees, so that's always a fun time. I'm usually pretty calm and steady and let the bees and wasps do their thing, Yellow jackets, I'm not a big fan of because they're uber aggressive. My partner, she is super scared of it, so she creates some mayhem when it's close to her, and that really makes me nervous because I feel like I'll be in the crossfire of it. And speaking of flowers, this episode is about the Tulip Festival here in Washington. Last week we did a international trip to Ireland, so I feel like we do something this time of year, and it's perfect time because it's the Tulip Festival happening in April in Skagit Valley, Washington, which is a big event every year nationwide. I guess internationally too, since Canada is only an hour away from it. So we'll talk about the Tulip Festival, give you some great pictures, videos, stuff like that. My experience with it, some tips. Hopefully, I can give out to people who will come here to visit. But yeah, like springtime is happening. Easter was good, and I get to look forward to in the future what's coming up. And that kind of leads into our next segment: is where are you going? Kind of like when you ask a traveler, is you are always curious of where you've been, and then also what's in the future, what's planned out. And where we're going in the future is to Vancouver, Canada. Now, we've been to Vancouver probably a few times. We fly out to Vancouver because we're closer to the airport there than Seattle, even though it kind of confuses the border patrol of Canada. But we'll stay in Vancouver for a few nights. I'm pretty excited for it. We haven't really decided where particularly we're staying at. So if anyone has any tips, recommendations for us, it'd be great, especially places that are very scenic, photographic. We might stay at the city central because we used to live in downtown Kansas City, so we kind of miss that city stuff. But we're also kind of flexible to see what else it has to offer. We've been to Granville Island a couple times. I think on our weekends. So it's interesting to see the market. A lot of arts studios are out, photography, landscape, painting, all that types of stuff. So we're pretty excited for that. And yeah, then we probably will share our experiences of crossing the border, what you do through customs, some good tips to go by quicker if you think about traveling to Canada and the U.S. back a lot, like we do. How to get through the check booths, the toll booths, not toll booths, but the booths, the crossover, how to get that through quickly, faster, because sometimes there's a long line and sometimes it goes by pretty quickly. So that's what's been going on for us in the past and what's going to be going on into the future. So, and this kind of leads into our next segment, which is traveler's tips. Now, each week I will try to share a tip that I've, through my own experiences, things that I've done wrong traveling, and hopefully share that to you, and hopefully it will educate someone out there. Or it might be some people like, yeah, that's pretty common, you dumb. So, traveling tips. The traveling tip of the day, I guess of the week, would be when you travel internationally. And this rule probably doesn't involve with some countries, but when you travel internationally, do not bring cash with you, American U.S. cash. Bring a credit card or a debit card or international debit card or a prepaid debit card that will work internationally as well. That could work. The reason why. So my trip to Ireland, which is my first European trip, I brought nothing but cash with me. I was like, I'm just going to exchange this because I went to Mexico a few times before that, and that's what we did there. And they take U.S. dollars, not a big deal. So I was kind of an ignorant American. Took all the money I raised with me to there, and I was afraid that if something happens to my credit card or debit card or something like that, it'll be an issue, which I was wrong. So I brought cash, and I got exchanged nicely at the airport, which most airports, if they have a lot of international travels, they have a booth to exchange money. The interest rate from the exchange was pretty higher at the airports. It was about 15%. So exchange it. We went to Dublin. Fine. Went to Cork. And my money was out. I needed more money. And the banks were closed at that time. And we had a hard time trying to find money to exchange with. So we spent all afternoon trying to exchange it. I just couldn't. Because most places won't take US dollars, US money. At the time, the euro was probably 25 cents more than the US dollars. So the US dollar was less than the euro. So spent all afternoon that day, and then spend another day, a couple days afterwards, just trying to find banks or stuff open to exchange money. It's a waste of time. And then if you're in a situation where you kind of need the money for whatever reason, like for example, when we went to Cork, we tried to go to the Blarney Castle, and we couldn't because we spent too much time finding a bank or a place to exchange it that we missed our bus. So what I do now is I have a traveler's credit card. I applied for one, did that. Some banks, my bank just now started using this as a debit card. You can travel internationally, just give them a call. But make sure you give them a call, because here's what happened to my bank. I gave them a notice like, hey, I'm traveling to Italy, which is another trip that we took, and I'll explain that in the future. I told a small bank, mom and pop bank, it's like a few branches in the Northwest Missouri part. Call them a week, a day, and then also a day before I left too, to make sure like, hey, I'm traveling at these dates. Don't freeze my debit card. And I got there, and my debit card got freeze. And it's probably about like a 10-hour difference. So like, and my phone, all I have was roaming charges for my phone call, because I didn't bring any international minutes, or my phone plan did not acquire for international minutes and stuff like that. And I should probably got a prepaid plan advance, so that's my bad. But I'm calling them, and it's nighttime, late nighttime for me, and it's early morning for them, or it's like midnight for me. I'm tired and have no money, which luckily I'm with my partner, and she had a credit card and stuff like that, so we were good on that part. So they claimed it got fixed. They didn't, because it froze and freeze again. And it eventually cost me like about $100 of roaming charges on my phone bill. Just for 2 days too. And just for being called and hold, and they're not doing their job. So what I do now is I just do a credit card. I get a credit card, and I can use it to exchange money from the ATM machine, or I have a debit card to exchange it for the money for the ATM machine. But I get a credit card. I'll just save all my money I have up for the trip, save it, put it in the bank, and once I get back, I'll just pay it off with the money I saved for the trip for the credit card for my next bill. And the good thing about that is it raises your credit up. So you spend, I don't know, a trip, like you're spending about like at least $1,000 on flights and stays and sightseeing and souvenirs. So like you put it all on the credit card, and when you come back a month later when you get your bill, just pay it off the money you saved. You raise your credit up, your credit score, and it makes it easier to travel with. And then I would say too, if you travel with a credit card, make sure you do research which country takes certain credit cards. So I have a Visa and a MasterCard. Usually it's back and forth, which is better. And then the ATM machine exchange rate is actually cheaper than the banks and any other booths you might find at the airport. So it's the same percentage as you would for any ATM machine, which is like, what is it, like 10 cents a dollar or something like that. So I always recommend that. So if you get a good bank that deals, I guess like a bigger bank, like, I don't know, like that has more than a few branches in the corner of a state, get a good international debit card, and then do a credit card is my recommendation to traveling. So I know some places, like if you say like, I've been to Mexico, I've brought US cash for all my life there. Yeah, some places might do that. Some resorts might do American, you can tip with the American currency or all this other stuff too. So there's some places out there, but I always recommend just bring a credit card and no cash with you, because it's safer. If something does happen to your credit card or debit card, there's insurance on that. You can easily decline it if you need to. And there's always backups to get money, right? Versus like you bring a bunch of cash with you and get robbed and you lost that money. So that's kind of my tip. If anyone else has any like suggestions or tips for like bringing money over internationally, leave us a comment. And also would say too, like before you travel to a location, know the exchange rates. Like the US dollar is this if you're a US citizen, or this could apply to anyone internationally as well. Know how much your currency is worth compared to the country you're going to, the percentages. Because sometimes ATM machines will, I've heard some countries will try to scam you. Like, hey, you want to get this much money instead of, how some ATM machines like, hey, do you want to get like this amount of money instead versus the one you really wanted, like $80, $60 or something like that. Well, some countries will have that, but the currency might look like much more than it really is. Like, hey, do you need to exchange like 20,000 yen or something like that, or 20,000 something else? I don't know. And you're like, yeah, I feel like that's practical, but really you're taking out more money than you realize you need to. So know your exchange rates, know the percentages, be smart with it. Even ATM machines that are trying to scam you, they might ask you a question. Just like, okay, like, no, that's not a good deal. I'd rather take off the money that I want. So hopefully that helps. Hopefully that helps. And moving on to our next segment. And this segment, I'll call it the segment. Like someone says something to you interesting, or something like very, I don't know, like a good like thought they gave you, or like a shower thought or an information like, I did not think about that. That's interesting. So this is our segment. So this segment will be about fun facts about different countries, different areas, about rules, laws, culture stuff, something that I might find different for me, and maybe to you too if you're living in a different part of the world, and like, hey, that's interesting. So our first of the week is, we'll talk about a town in Canada called Churchill. And it's in Manitoba, the province of Manitoba of Canada. The town is on the Hudson Bay. It's kind of more northern of Manitoba, close to the next province north of that. I'm not for sure, but it's pretty far north. This is how far it is. You can't travel by car. So to get there, you have to get there by train or by a 3-hour flight. So this town is interesting because I'm not for sure this is a law or a written or unwritten rule. I try to find more information about this, but I think it's just more of an unwritten rule of like, no, this is what people do in this town. So people keep their doors and cars unlocked. Like completely. The reason why, because of polar bears. This town has overabundance of polar bears. And the people keep their doors and cars unlocked in case a stranger needs to escape from a polar bear. So they have some shelter to run to. So the fear of being robbed, or I guess grant that to your vehicle to an area that you can't really drive too far from because there's no roads leading out to it. The fear of polar bears is much more, I guess, more fearful, which is understandable. So I looked it up. As of 2021, there are recorded 618 bears reported into that. And it has declined since 2016, which they had over 800 bears. And the reason why the town population itself is 899. So at one point, it's probably at 1 population per bear of a population. So that's how much of a polar bear situation it is. And I feel like at this point, it's their turf, really. Like you can't, there's only so much you could do. So the reason why it's a polar bear capital of the world is like, I guess it's a good migration path, or the town settled at is a good migration of polar bears. I guess polar bears migrate all through the year. I guess it's very probably popular in certain parts of the year too. So you always have to keep your car open and your vehicle, the fear of being attacked by a polar bear. And there's rules to it as well. Like you don't go out at nighttime. When it's dusk, no go. A lot of people have armed themselves just in case. And this is how scary polar bears are. I know how they look cute, and you see them every year on the Coke bottles around Christmas time. They are actually more dangerous than grizzly bears. They are more aggressive, and while grizzly bears, they will attack you or attack someone because if they feel threatened through territorial, or if they have the cubs, or if they feel like you're a threat at all, they don't come and attack you. Polar bears, on the other hand, just due to their harsh environments, and they are always constantly looking for food, including you, us people. They are considered as food. They tend to hunt people, and yeah, while other bears are kind of like more like, hey, back off, pal. Polar bears are the only ones that were like, hey, you look like a pretty tasty meal. So another reason why polar bears are kind of like be more scarce in that part of the world. Now it's also a very popular location where they do tours with polar bears, which I don't know if how that works. I feel like if a town has a reputation of like we keep everything unlocked in case polar bears attacks us, which is everyone has that common rule, I guess. I don't know if having tours is a good idea to encourage more polar bears, because I've seen idiot tourist people in parks, in national parks, where they feed animals, or even at zoos. So will this encourage more polar bears to be in the area? Will this kind of more encourage them to be more aggressive? I don't know, it's these questions I ask. And I wonder if like there's like shelters in this town as well. I tried to look it up. I couldn't find anything. But I was wondering if there's like little like vehicles, like armored vehicles they have like stationed in different parts, or these little shelters that you can get a quick getaway. You know how like sometimes in like, how is it, London, they have the police telephone booths to go there to call for help. I wonder if they have like polar bear booths where you can stay there and hide for a bit. But yeah, that seems like a wild experience, or a pretty tip, or a type of fact, right? Now, next week we'll give you another fun like fact, or that maybe some fun laws or tips, or something really strange or bizarre, something unusual that we can really dive into. So in this part of the episode, we'll talk about our trip of the day. Now, last week we did Ireland, our international. So this week we're doing something more local here in Washington. The Tulip Festival, which is the Tulip Festival happens during April 1st to 30th. The peak season, bloom season kind of differs depending on the season. I think my first year I attended, it was kind of more in the middle of the April, but then last year was kind of more beginning. So it really differs. There's a lot of websites out there that kind of give you more of an indication of when it's blooming. Like here's some tulips blooming early, or some, and then it'll try to give you an indication of when they're starting to die. But the Tulip Festival is such a fun, unique area as a photographer, videographer. If you're a fan of flowers or plants, it's such a unique area, especially if you're not from around here, right? I grew up around farms with a bunch of crops, soybeans, corn, wheat. So to see a flower farm, which that's what it is, farmers who grow flowers, it's really unique, and the colors, and it's a really pretty sight. And when you see these pictures, you'll understand. So the area is called Skagit Valley, which is a county and a valley itself. The valley has a lot of agriculture area, so they grow a bunch of other things. But flowers is kind of a big thing. They produce 75% of all tulips in the U.S. And Skagit, the funny thing is, I think the Skagit Valley was inspired by Holland, which is a kind of like the mecca of all tulip growing in the world. And it started in the late 1800s, and it's kind of grew over the last century. And this is how big like a reputation it has. Someone was telling me a local person here they ordered tulips from Holland. Just they've been to the Tulip Festival in Skagit County or Skagit Valley, and they enjoy it, but they kind of want some Holland flowers, right? From Holland to see some different for their garden and all that stuff. So they order it and paid for the international delivery. And once they got the bulbs, the tulip bulbs where you can plant in the ground and grow every year. She read something on the bottom that says, grown in Skagit Valley, Washington. And she's like, well, I ordered flowers from all the way from Holland for them just to have some exports of their own from a location that was probably like 30 minutes south of where she lives. So I thought that was kind of funny. And if you didn't, then I'm sorry. But it's a pretty big deal. A lot of people travel there. It's a pretty good touristy time of the year. I try to attend only on weekdays, and it's still pretty packed and pretty full. And I'll tell you some tips to get there to avoid the crowd. So my preparation of going to it was, I guess, if you have a camera, make sure your batteries and stuff is fine. A phone would just be fine as well. But I would say bring a jacket, a rain jacket. The Washington weather here is kind of rainy or drizzly, so you might get wet no matter what. And I would say put on shoes that are not, you'd be okay that will get dirty. You'll do a lot of walking, for one, and the fields could get muddy. They try to gravel some places around it as best they can, but I mean, it's not 100%. There's a good chance you get muddy. There'll be dirt on it. There's a good chance the weather will be not the best. Been there twice. I don't think I've been on a sunny day there. Maybe I have. But my first day was windy, rainy, and cold. The videos you'll see here is very windy enough that I had a tripod with me, and it was still blowing my camera around. And it was raining too, which is not a fun thing to think about when you have an expensive camera. So bring a jacket, rain jacket, warm clothes to layer up, and good shoes. Walking shoes and shoes that you don't care if it gets muddy. So hiking boots, be fine. If you're trying to doll up for the gram, you might have a problem with this. You might not. You might have some good times. And then the drive there to the valley, especially during the flower seasons, is amazing. Because not only the tulips are blooming, the daffodils are blooming as well. And they bloom a little quick first before the tulips, so you kind of get a nice segue of flowers. And you get these acres of fields of flowers, which is amazing. It's fun sight to see, fun drive through flowers. Fun to drive through the valley with it. And yeah, I would say also too, there's lots of places that you can come and visit and get tickets to see the Skagit Valley farms. And those farms that are private property don't want tourists. They're doing it for purely a business. It's kind of like a farm, like a bunch of farmers with fields that grow in crops. They don't want people going into their property and damage stuff and stuff like that. They're doing it for a way of living. And there's plenty of places out there that offers visitors, kind of like if you go to a pumpkin patch, right, or a farm, a place that does like a lot of farm stuff for people. You know, they have crops there, plants, gardens for touristy people, and there's farms that they don't want people there. So avoid private property, respect people's property for sure. Some people try to stop on the road and take pictures, which is dangerous. Don't do that. Don't be an a-hole. So I get there pretty early, and I would say get there early because parking will go by quick. So I get there pretty early. I usually try to get there within an hour when the doors open because the parking situation can get pretty crazy. So I got there both times probably like an hour after it was open, and the parking. So the one I went to had like 2-3 good spaces of parking, and they have people that will guide you to spaces, stuff like that. And the first one was almost filled up, and there's a variety of people, couples, lots of families, lots of kids. So there's wee kids there too, families, all types of people. And it's people from touring, a lot of local people too, but there's also people from international people from Canada, tourist people from all through the U.S. because you can see the license plates. So a lot of people around the world and around the country come to see this. So get there early if you want some good parking spots, and then if not, you have to park on the roads if they allowed you in some places. So we get there, and wait for the line for our tickets. You can buy tickets advance, or you can do it online. If you do the online, the line is always shorter, and they scan it and go. Unless someone asks a bajillion questions. The time we went, my first time, it was during COVID, so you had to pre-buy all your tickets anyways. So parked, left, got into the side of it, and once you get inside of it, it's a really interesting area because before you get to the fields, you kind of see this little, I guess, display area. They have a bunch of flower gardens set up, and it shows you the different variety of ways of how they mix and match their flowers and the variety of stuff they can do. And if you're a big planter or a garden person, or you love flowers, this is a great way to like get some good inspiration from. Because there's one area that's a big, like 4 large areas of flower gardens, and they did different designs, different combinations of flowers. And you can see from the pictures here of the designs. You can check this out on YouTube if you're listening to this on Spotify or Apple. And yeah, it's neat. And then there's other areas too around the front part of it. Like they had some heart designs, some shaped designs. You can do some letters. Like there's a different variety of stuff. And there's some good picture opportunities too for stuff. Everyone has a camera, everyone has a picture. So everyone's pretty, at least the times I went to for the garden areas, everyone was pretty nice and like respectful for photographers or people who are trying to do selfies and stuff like that. So like everyone's trying to capture these moments themselves. So it's always nice to be polite to everyone, at least in my experience. As a photographer who does nature and landscape, I prefer no people in it just because it looks better. Sometimes you can't help it, and sometimes people are in it, and that's fine. But I always try to be respectful. Like if someone's in there taking pictures, like I give them a chance to go do it. I don't try to cut in front of people, and hopefully people don't try to cut in front of me. It's happened a couple of times. It gets annoying, but yeah, just be respectful for everyone else. So after you kind of go through the garden areas, and it's kind of like not in a, I'm trying to way to describe it. Like you can go to the fields immediately there. There's different paths, but it kind of like branches out to see different things. And the gardens will have more a variety of flowers and plants too. Some plants I have not seen before, which are wild. So once we finished that, we went to the actual fields, and the field walk was actually, it's a good probably like, I don't know, 50 to 100 yards of just like walking across this field, and it's just like nothing there to get to the flowers. And you can see the flower fields from afar, but it's definitely a walk. So you're thinking about 50 to 100 yards just to get there. And once you get there, you see the different fields. You can see the different like flowers being bloomed, and it's always color coded too, or by different flowers. So right now at the time, you can see a bunch of daffodils, the yellow flowers there, and then you can see the tulips are just starting to bloom a little bit. And this walking to it is pretty fun. It's a good like, so everything's kind of a big giant rectangle squares. Paths are kind of easy to get to, walk around, but it's a good walk, good way to get in some nature in you, some vitamin D in you. Get that sunlight if it happens on a Washington day. But this is the time where it's like, if it's windy or rainy, this is the part where it's kind of like will get you, because you're flat land, nothing protects you. So get a good coat that protects you from the wind and the rain and the cold if it gets a little chilly. So always check the weather beforehand. Washington, you kind of have to, it's kind of in a weird Midwest way where it's like you just don't know what the weather's going to be like. But in Washington, it's like, there's a good chance you might get wet. So plan to get wet and some wind. So when you get there, like you tell from the pictures, they're very like, there's a nice symmetric feelings with these pictures. And again, you're with a bunch of people, like couples, kids, and the kids parts are kind of, it depends on, I mean, kids are kids, right? So like, either they are really good or they're just like doing everything except enjoying the flowers, right? So what, and then somehow they love puddles of water too, so watch out for that. But you can walk around, like I said, it's a good hike. It's very nice looking. It's always interesting because, like, for me, like, it's just like, see this forever infinity of rows of flowers, of tulips. But here's another situation too. Once you're there, be respectful of the flowers. They're allowing people to take pictures along the here, so don't get in the middle of the field. Don't take pictures. Don't pick the flowers, because at the end of the day, they use these flowers to sell, to grow, and to make a living. I mean, these are farmers out there too, so they respect their property. This is the way to make the living. So don't be picking flowers with you. Don't be breaking the stalks of the tulips. So, and I would say generally mostly people are, I would say like 80, 95% of the people there are pretty good with that. And there's always that one couple or somebody who's just trying to, I don't know, do something. And like, and I guess as a seer and photographer, like you really don't need to be that way unless, I don't know. That frustrates me sometimes. But the saturated colors of the fields are nice with the red, the purple. It's just like a giant rainbow land or Skittle land. I guess Skittles if it's like OCD sorted out. But once you're there too, after the fields, there's always a big tent where they can sell some merchandise. They sell some garden stuff. But here's they can sell flowers, cut flowers for you to buy to give it to your loved ones or significant others, or just for yourself. Treat yourself with some tulips. You can also buy bulbs there. They sell bulbs for the plants. Great thing about tulips and daffodil bulbs is like once you plant them, they grow back yearly. So it's a pretty easy to maintain. If you want some nice flowers in your garden, I recommend these places. The quality is nice. You got a nice variety of colors. They'll give you like, hey, do you want a purple one? I'll give you a purple one. You can also send and deliver it to other people around the country. Like, hey, do you live here? Well, we can just send that to your house in Missouri or in Maine or, I don't know, some other place. I don't know if temperature-wise affects with tulips. I think I've only lived in cold states, if you count Missouri as a hybrid of a cold and hot state. Again, you can see a lot of these images and videos of it on YouTube. We'll do a nice, fun highlight video of it. And now I'm going to talk about some of my favorite pictures of what kind of display here. All right, the first one is I really enjoy this one. I want to say it's a pink tulip in front of these purple lavender plants. I really like I found I'm a big fan of water. I'll discuss this more with our guest next week. And the raindrops on the tulip and with the lavender in the background is really good. It's a fun composition for me. And I like the detail of the water droplets on the tulip too. Kind of tells, I don't know, I feel like I could tell a story, or I feel like it's set up for a scene in a movie. I really enjoy that one. And my next one is, this one is probably your typical, I guess if you see a tulip picture or a tulip field picture or field of tulips, whichever it is. This is probably the more stereotypical one of it. You get two major colors from each side, and the rows and the stalks of tulips will just go. It feels like it goes on forever, right? Endless. And it's just kind of imagine like how far it goes out there and like the infinity of it. But I really like this one a lot. I kind of actually like there's a tire track in the middle of it. Kind of gives you more of that farm feel, the agriculture feel to it. Like there's like, it's been here before. There's it's like a historical artifact almost feeling for me. And then you get that kind of slight hazy background of looks like some mountains there too. Kind of adds more atmosphere to it as well. I wish it was a more clearer day, which is kind of tough here. Would make it a little better, but the cloudy day that meshes with the kind of like the mountain in the background, like I said before, it kind of gives you the illusion that it's cloudy, it's foggy, it's kind of more mysterious a little bit too, right? It's kind of like more enchantment, maybe. But I like the colors of the red and the purple. I did a really good job of like the details of the flowers too, which is always a big plus for me. If I get something in focus, it's always a big plus. And I would say a picture like this for me will take about, to get the right angle, because either it's been down to look at it, which is like, this is a weird position to have yourself in, especially if there's other people around you. So I will kind of like hold my camera down below me a little bit and then focus, have the autofocus on and take the picture. And I'll probably do like maybe 5 or 6 or 7 of those. And if I see one that's good and focused, I'll pick that one. And then I'll probably do a little bit of editing. I might just turn the colors up for the flowers up just a little bit. And maybe just sharpen it just a little tad bit, but I don't try to sharpen it too much. I try to make sure, like, I guess my philosophy for editing and pictures, I try to have everything matched there on site. So when I do edit, it's very minimal stuff at fixing. If I had to tweak something, it might be the sky or the colors a little bit to bring more color out. And this one is kind of more, I guess to describe it, it's kind of like, instead of like going like, you see the kind of stalks of the flowers, this other one is kind of more, get more of a side angle, I guess a profile angle of the flowers. So you get like kind of layers of like the red, purple, and yellow all in it. It's kind of like a kind of quilt almost, or a rainbow, you could say. These ones are nice. I wish I kind of get more high into it to see more of the colors. I think I had to make the choice of if I want more people in my picture or not. And that's always I don't know. It's always an interesting battle to like, do I want people in this or not? Because I feel like sometimes people can add to a scene too, like the busyness, or like can just add more to it versus like an isolated scene that no one's around, because sometimes that's not realistically possible or realistic. There's a few places like in Yellowstone I took pictures of, and there's just like a lot of people in there because Yellowstone is popular, especially in the summertime. And it's just like, sometimes it helps it, it really kind of focuses the attention on what the display is too, if you want to focus on a certain thing. So having people around it of something into looking at something, or have their bodies language pointing towards something, it really can really draw the eye quickly to that location. For this one, I guess that the eye drawn is to the first layer of the red. So the bottom part is red, purple, and yellow for the ones who are just listening to this. It's almost like a layered cake too, I feel. It's like you got your big bottom cake of layer is like red icing, then your purple, lavender, and then yellow on top. But really proud of this one again. Most of the flowers here are in focused. I definitely like the yellow saturation, or the color saturation of it too. And my last favorite one is this one. And it's another higher angle of the stock version. Kind of, you see the rose too. You can also get more wider perspective to see different colors of the other roses too. So it's kind of like more of a, not only does it kind of gives you that infinity-ness of the flowers just keeps going on and on until the horizon. Your eye kind of goes out to the sides as well to see it just continues more and more beyond the frame itself. So you feel like these flowers, beds of flowers, are going everywhere. But I really like it. You get really good focus on most of the flowers in the picture. A lot of good details. You really see the different shades of colors with it too. I wonder how much cross-pollination is there in tulips. I just think of like Animal Crossing, and they have tulips and flowers where you cross-pollinate. I wonder how true that is. I kind of wish, I think if we do this again for Tulip Festival, we should get a farmer or someone who's there, who works it. Get a nice interview and maybe get some exclusive stuff with that too. But those are my favorite pictures, which you can see them on our YouTube side of things. And yeah, it's a great experience. I would recommend doing it. If you don't have the money to go to Holland to see it, here in Washington's great. Washington has some great parks to go to as well. Or there's Seattle, which is fun. And I mean, the parks around the area, there's Olympic, there's Mount Rainier, there's Baker, which is close to me. Or if you want to go to Vancouver, which is kind of past through my little small town. But yeah, definitely recommend this. Hopefully this will inspire you to come here. That'd be great. If you've ever been to the Tulip Festival, please let us know what you think of it. Some recommendations. I think I've only been to one farm per se. So there's some places that you can do like a pass. You can see a variety of stuff. And there's some good dining areas too. Mount Vernon is there's some fun dining areas you can eat at on the way there. And Anacortes, which is a fun harbor town. Beautiful place to go to. And it's a place you actually go to take the ferry to San Juan, which we'll hopefully discuss about that in the future. But yeah, and then also if you are curious about the Tulip Festival and you've always had a desire to see it, let us know. Comments down on it, and let us know what you think of it. And so we're going to close this episode out by saying, like, you catch us on Mondays on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And on Tuesdays, you could see the YouTube version of this. You can see my face on it. I think last episode, but the last episode we did kind of a black and white version of it. I think I'm going to keep it that way for now. I think it really makes the photos and videos really pop with the colors. And it's something a little different, We'll see it. If you have any comments that you prefer the color version, I guess, of me, let me know. I can definitely switch it back if people don't like the black and white part of it. But again, yeah, catch us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, on YouTube. Like it, share with your friends. And we're excited to expand this more. And I'm excited for our next guest next week of Angel, the photographer. So thank you, listeners. And thank you, travelers out there. And hopefully you tune in next week. So, all right. I bid you all a farewell.